AITA for telling my cousin I am not sorry about what happened to her dad's life after he hit me. Posting on a throwaway because people who follow my main do not need to know about the dark family history. My aunt used to be married to a guy called John and they had my cousin Abby. John was a pretty awful guy. I knew that even at a young age. Our whole family hated him. He was a drunk, belligerent, had a temper, all the usuals. My aunt was blind to it. One day, when I was 8, I was over at their house with Abby and my aunt was supposed to be watching us. I can't remember the circumstances of why I was there, but my mom insists they must have been desperate for childcare. Anyway, my aunt was supposed to be there and John was supposed to be at work, but she gave me a phone just in case of emergencies. John came home at some point during the day and went straight to bed. Me and Abby were playing in her room and my aunt was downstairs. I guess we were making too much noise because John woke up and totally lost his shit. He stormed into the room, screaming at us. It all happened pretty quickly, but from what I remember, he shoved Abby to the ground and kicked her. Not hard, just sort of pushed her with his foot while she tried to get up. I ran and hid behind the bed, but he came and grabbed me. He dragged me over to the middle of the room and slapped me. Again, not that hard, but enough to make me cry because I'd never been hit before. My scream brought my aunt into the room and she was pretty scared. I remember her being really upset and John defending himself, saying we needed to learn to be quiet and it was her fault for not watching us while he was sleeping. Eventually he left the room and my aunt was comforting me. She begged me not to tell my mom. She offered me money and ice cream to stay quiet. I was so scared that I agreed. Right after we had ice cream downstairs, I went to the bathroom and called my dad and told him what happened. 20 minutes later, my dad shows up and demands to see John. I won't describe in too much detail what happened, but John ended up in hospital after my dad was done with him. It was made clear that John was no longer welcome in the family and that my aunt wouldn't receive any more financial support if she stayed with him. So, she left. John's life kind of fell apart. He never worked very much and mostly lived off my aunt, who was living off my parents and grandparents. He had nowhere to live, inconsistent income, was couch surfing for a while. His drinking got worse. He has been in and out of Abby's life ever since. Abby has hated since the incident. She blames me for her family falling apart. I think it's kind of fair enough that she keeps her distance from me. I was a large part of why things happened the way they did, and that hurts her. The problem is she never shuts up about it. Every family event is just her complaining and sniping that she doesn't have a dad anymore because of me. The rest of the family do tell her to knock it off, but she always cries and that just ends the conversation. She gets worse about it when John drops contacting her for a few months. All this being said, we had a big Easter dinner at my grandparents' house and Abby was again complaining she hadn't seen her dad in months because he was away working across the country, and it was sad that at his age he had to take these kinds of jobs because he lost his family over some whining brat Akemi who had never apologized. I won't lie. I was a little hungover, had just got off a plane. I was not at my most gracious, but I had just had enough. Before anyone else could tell her to knock it off, I said I wasn't the least bit sorry about what happened to her dad. I said he was an abusive boss, and just because she was okay with him hitting children doesn't mean anyone else was, and that if he had had 2 brain cells that weren't constantly fighting, maybe he'd have been smart enough to keep his unhinged behavior focused on the people who would put up with it. Well, that didn't go down well. Abby completely broke down, trashed her plate and glass, called me a psychopath, and left. My mother, stepdad, grandma, and aunt think I went overboard. Grandpa and stepbrother are on my side.